Nearly 4 years after the death of his son, a father claims there's been no accountability.
In August 2021, the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, signaling the end to the longest war in U.S. history. But that day turned chaotic and deadly. A suicide bomber killed 13 U.S. service members and more than 100 Afghan people outside the Kabul airport.
20-year-old Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz from Missouri was among the soldiers killed that day. But his actions helped get thousands of people to safety.
While his father fights for answers in his death, reporter Caroline Hecker shows us how his sacrifice helped give others a new beginning.
Mark Schmitz always knew his son Jared would one day be laid to rest at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery. He never could have imagined he'd be alive to see it.
It's a terrible day, honestly. We have a calendar in our living room that never changes. It always says August 26, 21.
That's the day Jared, along with 12 other U.S. service members, were outside Abbey Gate at the Kabul airport.
Hey, stop short!
Their goal was to help those with proper paperwork to safety while keeping the panicked crowd under control. That day, a suicide bomber would take their lives, along with hundreds of Afghans. Schmitz wants answers to the chaos and bloodshed. 3 years later, he says he's still waiting.
To this day, nothing has changed. I mean, nobody has admitted fault to anything, and we all know, civilians alike, know this thing was a debacle and a total failure.
Without the dedication and ultimate sacrifice made by Lance Corporal Schmitz and others, countless people would remain trapped in Afghanistan. Zizi Safi is grateful she's not one of them.
I was very interested to be educated woman and independent woman from the beginning, from a very young age.
She was 4 years old on 9/11 and remembers her father helping U.S. troops in their eastern village of Afghanistan. Able to attend school, she decided to learn English when she was 15. That choice would alter the course of her life.
The class finished and then we were coming back home. We were captured by the Taliban.
She says the Taliban kidnappers beat and tortured her for wanting to learn English.
We get to the riverside and then they took my book and threw it away in the river. And then I told them the truth that you took away my book from me, but you cannot take the knowledge in my mind away from me.
After 4 days, she was able to convince her kidnappers to let her go home to her parents before agreeing to return to marry one of the elder leaders. That, she says, was never going to happen. Instead, impressed with her ability to outsmart the Taliban, the U.S. military offered her a job as a translator.
This is me when I was 16 years old and I started my job with them.
Zizi went on daily missions with U.S. forces, serving as both a translator and culture advisor. She stood out as both an Afghan and a woman.
I thought this is the right thing to do, and I have the knowledge, I have the education, why not to help the U.S. military in Afghanistan? Here I was out on a mission.
Over the course of 10 years, she helped collect information and facilitate meetings with military officials and locals. In August of 2021, after her service had ended, she remembers watching the Taliban take over from her apartment window.
I can see the Taliban on the street building checkpoints, and I don't feel safe. If they caught me with the U.S. passport, that's the end of my life. But they said, you have no way, we believe in you, you have to make it to the airport, you have no choice.
She made it, saying goodbye to her family before boarding the plane. It would end up being the last commercial flight out.
Finally, after 10 years fighting against the Taliban, I was out of reach of the Taliban. And I was in the air, and after a few hours, I landed in Doha.
3 years later, as Zizi looks forward to her life in America, the Schmitz family is left wondering what could have been.
23 years old, that's just life getting started. And he would have really been figuring out who he really was, you know.
It's a chance Jared will never get, but the greatest of gifts he gave others.
God felt his work here was done.
In September 2024, the Schmitz family traveled to Washington, D.C. to receive the Congressional Gold Medal on behalf of their son, awarded posthumously to the 13 U.S. service members killed in the attack. As for Zizi, she now has a job, a place to live, and most exciting, she says, her driver's license.